you have there a clown. I mean, he may, as he said, if you remember, I support everything. 1 state, 2 states, 3 states. I mean, he may come back to power, God forbid, and say the same. And he may be even helpful in a certain moment. You never know. He is totally unexpected. And God forbid, really, I pray for America.
What does a two-state solution really mean, and is it even possible now? Well, we can speak to Yossi Beilin, who's done a number of ministerial jobs in Israel and helped negotiate the Oslo Accords between Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Those agreements were supposed to pave a path towards a two-state solution. Good morning, Yossi.
Good morning.
I suppose that the question at the moment is, do you still think a two-state solution is even possible?
Much more than before. Actually, just a month ago, people used to say, especially when we marked the 30th anniversary to the Oslo Agreement, that the idea of a two-state solution is over because of some main reasons. One of them is the split on the Palestinian side between Fatah and Hamas. And on the other hand, the many settlements and settlers on the West Bank, many more than when we signed the Oslo Agreement, almost 6 times bigger. So today it is a different situation, regretfully, after a horrible, horrible catastrophe. And that is the Middle East is back on the agenda. It was off and it is now on. And the American president and other leaders, as you quoted right now, are speaking about the morning after. And this is a very, very important development. The second thing is that if we succeed to drive the Hamas leadership from Gaza, then there will be only one address on the Palestinian side, which is the PLO. And in such a situation where it is high on the agenda, people understand that managing the conflict is nonsense. Nonsense. Nobody succeeds to manage a conflict. You can never control any conflict. And so when people understand it now much better, the issue of the two-state solution, which is the most, I would say, natural solution. I mean, it has been there since November 47, when the UN General Assembly decided on the partition land between the Arabs and the Jews.
Yeah.
And nobody invented something much better than that. And I believe that once we are back to the negotiation table, when there is another government in Israel, I don't believe that the Netanyahu government will prevail politically one day after the war, and the Palestinian leadership, I think that we can really get to the two-state solution, because we know today much better than 30 years ago how will it look like. We have formal and informal negotiations. We know the solutions. And I think that if we solve also the issue of the settlements by allowing the Israeli settlers to remain where they are under the Palestinian state, that will actually solve the major obstacle right now and pave the way towards a two-state solution, not in 100 years, but in a year or two.
So do you really think that would be possible within a year or two? Because there's so many questions to unpick in what you've just said there. But the reality is, you're saying that while Benjamin Netanyahu remains, this is not possible. While Hamas remains, this is not possible. There needs to be an acceptance on both sides that conflict is not the way to resolve this, which at the moment feels impossible. And there is also the question, I mean, as you've raised there, of the settlements. I mean, the Oslo Accords never even, I mean, they never talked about a Palestinian state. It's never, the negotiation process has never even got to that point. What makes you think that we now could progress? Is it the involvement of international partners like the Qataris? Is it those big governments being involved that makes you think that there is hope here?
It is mainly the United States. Europe is there. As it was said a few minutes ago, it became a lip service for the Europeans to say two-state solution. I support a two-state solution. Okay, but what are you going to do with the settlements? What are you going to do with the settlers? What are you going to do with Hamas? just to support a two-state solution is really hollow. And now there is an option, there is an opportunity to use the very sad and tragic moment in order to get out of it. And generally speaking, peace treaties are made after wars, not after a long period of peace. So again, there is an urgency to do something, to change the situation, to prevent the so many casualties, the civilians and the young soldiers, and to do something different. And it is possible because we know exactly how the two-state solution will look like.
We've been talking a little bit this morning already about changes in the political landscape in America. And of course, I mean, we've mentioned other governments there. You say America is incredibly important. If Donald Trump does win the next American election, does that change things for you? Does it make it harder or easier?
God forbid, if he wins, it will be a tragedy for the whole world, and we will suffer too.
So you don't believe the two-state solution would be possible with Donald
you
Trump?
have there a clown. You have there a clown. I mean, as he said, if you remember, I support everything. 1 state, 2 states, 3 states. I mean, he may come back to power, God forbid, and say the same. And he may be even helpfully in a certain moment. You never know. He is totally unexpected. And God forbid, really, I pray for America that this guy will not come back.
Yeah. Just finally, because we often don't get to talking about what people in this area, ordinary people, feel like. Is the mood amongst Israelis, amongst those living in Gaza and the West Bank, are they supportive of a two-state solution? Do they believe it can happen?
They will support any solution which will be brought to them by the leaderships of both sides. As they supported the agreement with Egypt, whereby we left an area which was 3 times bigger than Israel at the time. And as they supported the accords with the PLO in 93, although beforehand they were totally against any talks to the PLO. You know that everywhere. You know that in North Ireland. You know that in other conflicts. People eventually support their leaderships also in democracies.
Yossi Beilin, fascinating talking to you. Thank you for joining us this morning to discuss the possibility of a two-state solution. And
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Yossi Beilin there saying he thinks it's entirely possible and now may well be the moment.
Nobody succeeds to manage a conflict in the end. What strikes me, though, is you mentioned Trump and he says he's a clown and it would be disastrous. Leadership matters so much.
Hugely, yeah.
And who is the figure in Israel? Who is the figure in the PLO who can say, we're going to have to concede stuff. We're going to have to compromise. We're going to have to, if it's the PLO saying, we're going to have to allow some settlers in the West Bank, we're going to rule them, but we're going to rule them humanely. They're going to stay there and they're going to be part of our society. Who in Israel is going to say, we're going to concede some land we've got in order to make this work and give that to the Palestinian people?
They never even got to that point last time. I mean, the Oslo Accords never reached that point, really. There was intention and there was hope and there was trust starting to build.
And there was an assassination.
An assassination, ultimately.
And so I just wonder, who is the figure who could come and say, and it would, that figure would shape the world. If there is a figure in Israel, I'm sure we'll talk about this again, we'll talk to someone in Israel, who are the next leaders? Because not Netanyahu. So who's next? And is there a figure that could do that? But, well, it's nice to hear someone being optimistic, at least.
It's nice to hear optimism and hope. But I think a year or two, which is what Yossi Beilin was saying there, a two-state solution would be possible. Even given his timeline, it seems like a tall order.